Goedenavond. Deze microfoon doet het, hè? Ja. Good evening, everybody. And it's super good to see that this hall is almost filled, that there are so many people, and I'm happy that you are all coming. Just to start off, this evening is organized by the Wim Krauwel Institute, and I'm co-chairing the Wim Krauwel Institute, so it's a group of people. They are at the board of the Wim Krauwel Institute. I'm the co-chair. And I just want to say a short introduction on what the Wim Krauwel Institute is, and then, of course, the program will follow its course, they are sitting here already. So the Wim Krauwel Institute looks at graphic design through the lens of the heritage, so the past, but also really looking at what does it mean for now, the now and here and then. And from there, what could graphic design be for the future? It means that there are a lot of activities, like this evening. It's all graphic. That's really meant to also look at current developments in graphic design. But we also have other activities. For instance, once a year there is a collaboration with the Stedelijk Museum and Allard Pierson to do the Wim Krauwel lezing, the lecture at the Stedelijk Museum. There is that, for instance, we installed a special professor for graphic design who is looking at social, political, economical links to graphic design. This is in collaboration with the UvA, the University of Amsterdam. And a very important partner is Allard Pierson, who they have an amazing archive of graphic design. So if you don't know that yet, have a look there or ask them what you could look at, because it's a treasure trove from the Middle Ages to now of material that is all books and posters and comics, and there's so much that I even can't explain it. Somebody told me today that they have 5 kilometers of archival material. So you're very much invited to do research there. So to go back to that, the professor with his or her students can do research there. But we also have, together with the Universiteit van Amsterdam, we have 2 fellows. That's Richard Niesen and Kilian Berg, and they are also the moderators tonight. So it's important to mention that we have this network, this small network that can be a bigger network of partners such as Allard Pierson, such as the Stedelijk Museum, but of course also the Zwijger, where we do 2 programs a year. And that gives us the opportunity to go into different levels of thinking about activating what is graphic design and how can it be used. Let's see, so I think it's time to introduce Richard Niesen and Kilian Berg. I don't know whom of you, I think Kilian is the first. So this is Kilian. He's going to, together with Richard, moderate this evening, and I hope you will have a very nice evening.
Hello. Welcome one, welcome all. I think mic is all okay, I see. Yes, okay, so this is all working, I think. So welcome to this evening of It's All Graphic, Between Archives and Urgencies. For this evening, we will be centering ourselves on the subject, or I would say the relation between archives and activism. So with us to discuss that subject, deepen it out, are Gekke Zaal, Farida Sedok, Maria Swartz, and Pauline Wiersema. So can we give them a warm welcome, please? So yes, my name is Kilian. I'm one of the moderators together with Richard Niesen, and to dive into the subject for this evening a little bit, to situate ourselves into this condition of the archives and urgencies. I would say, Richard, maybe you can shed some light. What are we talking about? What are we talking about? How do we get here?
Yeah, how do we get here? By bike. Let me start with that we noticed that graphic designers are increasingly working with archival material, explicitly looking at the past, for example, examining graphic design material of previous protest movements. In addition to existing archives, graphic designers also create new alternative archives, often with an activist approach. And the goal is to create a better alternative perspective to the future, on the future. So we see that designers organize themselves into collectives and embrace direct visual images that make a clear activist stance. So material from the 1980s often plays a central role in their projects. A period in which designers were heavily involved in political campaigns and social organizations. If you happen to have started art school in the 1990s, as I did, the activistic Wild Plakker Collective was one of your most important examples. And you can see one of their works over there. And they were in turn influenced by idealistic designers from another generation, such as Dick Elvers, about whom they also published a book in 1989. This book. But by the end of the 1980s, so while I was studying at the Gerrit Rietveld Academy, however, the role of graphic designer as activists seemed to have run out already. Political parties and idealistic institutions switched to advertisement companies, where professional communication proved to be far more effective than the artistic approach of graphic design. So flat advertising campaigns brought organizations such as Amnesty International many more new members, and idealism disappeared. The market would also solve this too. And few designers still believed in the power of their profession to improve the world. Irma Bohm even said in this book, the world must change. She said, I don't really know what I should be fighting for anymore. And the past seemed to be irrelevant. The Berlin Wall had fallen, apartheid disappeared, and infinite growth promised a bright future. But that time seemed to be over. And the 1990s, with their opportunism, is far behind us. The current fascination with activist heritage stems from social, cultural, and strategic motives. In this episode of It's All Graphic, we would like to explore this relationship between archives and the contemporary visual language of solidarity and activism. Questions that might be on the stage are, how can archival material, for example, be used to raise social awareness? And what is the role of graphic designers in all of this? How to open up archives, and how can designers make them easier to use and make more relevant to society? And to what extent should we continue to rely on priorly existing material instead of pursuing new visual languages reflecting the times that we live in now? Let's see. So we begin this evening right in the archive. Institutions that were closed are beginning to open up under social pressure. Designers are working with archive material, which often consists of printed matter. Graphic designers, such as Marius Schwartz, investigate and experiment with how archival material can play an active role in our collective memory. So, Marius, would you like to come over here? Marius is an independent graphic designer, and his approach is characterized by a strong integration of text, image, film, audio, and often working with archival material, with the aim of telling stories that challenge conventions and force new connections. While seeking ways which historical material can be brought back into life through design, he was responsible for the Open Archief design, a project promoting the accessibility of online collections and stimulating the creative reuse of collective heritage. Is that correct?
That's true. Yeah.
Marius Schwartz.
Well, thanks for the introduction. And also, of course, thanks for the invitation, Richard and Kilian. And thanks for everybody who came out here tonight. I want to start out with saying that I'm pretty excited to be here. And preparing this talk was was kind of tough, because you look at your own work and you're like, oh, it's all shit, and then you need to talk about it in ways that other people get excited. So I kind of needed to go back to this moment of excitement. And when I was thinking about this, it always comes down to in my work that I just really like books. And I think what I like about books most is the way they can tell stories in so many different ways. And the way you can create something, an object that is so all-encompassing, where storytelling, editing, design, text, image, and the whole object come together in this very unique way. And out comes an object that you can own and keep, and that is also relatively cheap. It's like 25 euro, and you have a piece of culture at home. And that's just pretty cool, I think. And the next thing, of course, is it doesn't really disappear anytime soon. And also, if you and I would want to make a book, we could make it now and have it by the end of next week. It's just a cool and accessible medium. And thinking a bit more about it, I also realized, and that's very obvious, books are archives, so there's definitely a connection there. And I collaborate with all different sorts of parties. I collaborate with institutions, and they deal with more public archives as a material. One of the examples is this magazine that I did for the World Exhibition in Osaka earlier this year. That was done together with a new institute, so that's a bigger party. But then also, I also really like to work directly with artists, and maybe then we deal a bit more with more private archives and more personal stories. An example of this is the book I did together with Lisa Kono about her dad and his migration from Japan to the Netherlands, and how, this cultural confusion maybe looks like. And then of course I'm aware that the book is not everything, and that there's other things to life than books, and then sometimes there are things that don't fit into a book. And one example is this screensaver that a friend of mine did, this drawing, this three-dimensional drawing, and I really liked it a lot, and I wanted to somehow preserve it or keep it accessible, and we turned it into a screensaver and published it on a website. Like, I have this little publishing project where I sometimes work with befriended artists. So this is maybe a little bit the range of things I do. And then sometimes, of course, when I need to earn some money, then I also work with institutions on visual identities, where maybe the graphic design aspect is more like a reaction to the topics and the material at hand in a more formal way. And I feel that I prepared a bit too many slides, so I will just cut short a little bit. The other things you just can look at. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the project Open Archief. And I mean, it's in the name, it's all about archives. And it is a project that started in 2019 by 3 archive institutions in the Netherlands, Beeld and Geluid, Het Nieuw Institute, and then later on it was joined by the Institute for Social History here in Amsterdam. And they wanted to invite artists to come into their collections and create new work from the material in their collections. And of course, what you get when you invite archives, and that's also the nice thing about this project, is that they just go, they go into the archive and they dig out stuff that maybe was forgotten in the canon of history, and they point out blind spots, and they're very critical towards the archive, and maybe they also revive movements in history that already existed, like about the squatting movement, but there are still super relevant today, and that's the same with feminism and all sorts of other suppression. In the beginning, I was more like taking care about the communication of the project, like announcing things, designing the website, and taking care of the exhibition design. And then it growingly went into collaborations with the artists. And one of the artists that asked me if I could help her was Femke Dekker, and she's an artist that works with audio, and then it's kind of natural that you need somebody to help you visualize these audio pieces in an exhibition. And so this poster was maybe one of the first closer collaborations together with one of the artists. But I want to say so many things, so I have to kind of keep it shallow now. But now I'm going to dive deeper into one of the projects. This was the third exhibition of Open Archive. Did I say everything I needed to say? The results of this research were always presented in an exhibition in a new institute. That's important to say. And this is an installation view of the third edition, and these two artists, this is Simon Tse and Alice Wong, and I got to know them through Open Archive, and in the meantime I would call them friends. And I really liked what they did in this exhibition. They were also dealing with sound, with a radio archive of a radio show called Snelle Berichte Nederland-China. And I liked their work in two ways. In one way, it was mainly about the topic that it was an interesting phenomenon that basically in the 1990s and zeros in the Netherlands, the Chinese migrant community had their own radio show, just daily broadcast on public radio in mother tongue, so it was in Cantonese. And comparable radio shows existed for the Moroccan community, for the Turkish community, daily half-an-hour time slot on public radio. And then, of course, with neoliberalization and budget cuts, this all disappeared. And that's kind of impossible today to think about it, that it existed. So it was already great that somebody pointed out this side phenomenon. And then, secondly, I was just very impressed by how they worked with this archive, because it was an incredible amount of archive and of history, and they managed to put this into a 20-minute sound piece that was actually exciting to listen to. And in the exhibition, you would see these 3 screens, and there was the translations or subtitles, because it was in Chinese, you wouldn't understand. But so you could listen and follow the story. And the problem with exhibitions is, of course, that they are temporary and they disappear and they are closed. And I just thought it was a shame that their project then also is not accessible anymore after all this effort that they put in. And so I suggested them if they would want to publish this together with me. And as I mentioned before with the screensaver, so this was another of these projects of friends that I saw, where I just thought I would like to extend that life and give it a more permanent home. And with their project, it was relatively easy because it was already a digital file, like a video with subtitles and audio. So I just had to, with little tweaks, I could upload it onto my publishing website. But what I do on top of that, what is very important to me, is that I kind of design an object to go along with this digital publication, because I don't like the temporarity of the exhibition, that it disappears, but putting something online is also super invisible and ephemeral. So with making an object, you somehow give it a place, and you can actually take it home and hold it and own it and revisit later on. So it's kind of like an up value of this. And so we made a cassette, which seemed obvious because the archive of this radio show was all recorded on cassette, so they engaged a lot in this material with cassette. So we made a cassette where the audio file is on the cassette, and in this booklet, in 4-point size, you can read all the subtitles. But I guess the most important part is the QR code that's on the cassette that leads you to the digital file where you can just read the publication and engage with it. And I would be a very bad publisher if I would miss out on this chance to invite you maybe to take a picture with your phone and keep it in an open tab and maybe read it tonight or somewhere later this week, because it's just a very good piece of art. Yes. So this effort with this publication, that's something that started from Open Archive, but it happened outside of Open Archive. That was more like a self-initiated effort. But Open Archive also continued, and we also were talking. So in the meantime, somehow I moved up from being a communications designer to part of the editorial team, which was nice. And we were just talking about ways how we could maybe, aside from exhibiting the results of the artists that engaged with the archives, how we could also find a more permanent way, more permanent form of showcasing their findings. And then after 3 exhibitions, the 4th iteration of the project was a publication. And in this publication, we made a summary of the project so far, but we also invited some new artists that were excited about their practice or the way they would react to the archive. And the design of this book, I can also talk a little bit about design, of course. It's like an archive folder, and inside this folder, every artist got a 16-page contribution, and 16 pages that basically equals 1 printing sheet. So in a way, everybody had the same space to occupy, but also we could individually react on their work with different paper, different printing technique, depending on what works for their artwork. And the artists, we would have a phone call, or they would come by in the studio, and we would discuss what is an interesting way of translating their work into the pages of the publication without compromising on their intentions. Yeah. It sounds all very dry, but I'm actually very excited about this. I just want to quickly mention 2 of these projects. One is a very colorful contribution by Belit Sak. She's going to have an exhibition with these paintings in Frame of Frames later this month. And because they are very big and colorful, I turned the publication to have them full size, and we managed with the printers to print them in fluorescent colors, so they really radiate off the page to kind of keep that energy that the original paintings had. And another example is this essay of Michiel Haube, an artist that I also like a lot. And with him, he works in this very essayistic style, and usually makes film essays. So for the publication, we kind of made a fake film, and it looks like screenshots of film stills of a film that doesn't exist. How are we on time? Yeah? I have one last thing, basically. No? Yeah, just go for it? Okay. The last thing that I wanted to mention, or kind of show a bit more close, is the contribution of Jessica de Abreu. She's one of the founders of Black Archive, and her contribution was called Archiving the Superpowers of Black Sex Workers. And it was a piece that she dedicated to her mom, who also just recently had passed. And it's a very personal piece of writing that I think on the one hand breaks with taboo of sex work, and on the other hand is kind of honoring her mom's legacy. And she just wanted to do the writing, and asked me if I could look or dive into her mom's archive, which is a box situated at the Black Archives, and find visual materials to go along with her text. Of course, I wanted to first introduce her with an image, and then later on inside the publication, I had this idea. I found a lot of text fragments, ephemera, of the sex club that her mom was running, and I thought it was a nice idea to have Jessica's writing together with the writing of her mom, and somehow have them have a dialogue. And there was very tribal things, with, like just signage inside the club, but then also weekly ads that were run in the newspaper, but then also a written note to Bob and Herman, and if they please want to stop smoking in the hallway. And somehow there's some sort of like something in her voice, the way how she wrote through all these different mediums, where I get very much of an idea of what kind of character it was, and I wanted to transport that into the publication. I have the book also with me, so if somebody wants to have a look later on, just ask me, and it's also for sale. and it's also for free online. And I want to close just with the outlook that we're now in Open Archive 4 or 5, and we invited 2 new artists, Mo Futures and Vasila Aboud, and I'm gonna get to know them on Friday. They're gonna visit me in the studio to talk about their plans and how we could possibly publish it. And I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then you also skipped some, unfortunately we run out of time, but I also have some questions.
Right.
But I will just ask one, but I have to choose one. Maybe since you also publish the works of the people that you work with, do you see publishing also as a form of activism in a way, in the fact that, because you activate the work in some way or another, or you bring it out there to add something, to contribute something to society?
Yeah.
How do you
no, I definitely think so, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think publishing somehow, because I started also this talk with this fascination for books, and publishing seems to be a very natural part of books, because they need to, I think, first as a designer I always think you just need to design it, but then if you have a good design but the printing is bad, you have a bad book. If you have a good design and the printing is good, you have a good book, but if it doesn't find the audience, worthless book. Yeah. And in a way, so I feel I'm getting growingly aware of how this is connected, and if you want to inject, I guess, an idea or a story or a overlooked history back into our canon or into our public conscious, then I guess books, no matter how small, or cassette tapes, yeah, no matter how small they are, I have to believe that,
yes, someone will dive it up later on.
Exactly, and even if maybe somebody with books in 20 years, somebody can find this and be excitable. Yeah. Funny enough, for instance, this book, I loved this book so much as a student. Yeah. But it's not available. It's out of print. Oh. Yeah, and it's so this book has something for me. It's like a holy grail of I always want to have this book. Yeah, you watch out. No, but there is this magic about this, and
that's true.
I think, is this an answer?
This is a very good answer.
Yeah?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kilian will introduce the next speaker. Thank you. We can. Or what's the?
Yeah, I will clap. Thank you, Marius. So we can now jump on to our second speaker, Geke Zaal. Geke Zaal is a graduate from the Rietveld Academy and is currently enrolled in the Werkplaats Typografie. She works as an independent graphic designer, but also in close collaborations with cultural institutes, and is working on a self-initiated magazine, and I'm kind of spoiling it because I think you're going to be talking about that, issues on which he is drawing on archival material to draw the parallels between the then and the now. Can I invite you over to take to the stage? Geke Zaal.
Thanks so much for inviting me, and thanks everyone for coming. I am Geke. I studied graphic design at the Rietveld Academy and graduated in 2019. Ever since, I've been working as a freelance designer, and I've had a diverse range of freelance jobs. However, I missed doing research-based work and going more in depth on the subject that mattered to me. I decided to start doing a design master at Werkplaats Typografie, yet at the same time, I was also going to sit-ins, demonstrations, and university occupations for Palestine. While being involved with this cause, I noticed getting mixed feelings about starting a design master's, yet I also thought it should be possible to use my design skills to help such causes and raise awareness on the topic. Meanwhile, my friends and I were debating tactics. What works? How far can we go? And how do we organize ourselves? A friend said, the wheel has already been invented. We can draw from the past. And that stuck with me. I began looking not only at text, but at images of protest, signs, banners, gestures. And my question became, How can I use my skills as a designer outside of client work to learn about this topic and to draw attention to today's urgencies? I started collecting what I call non-textual protests, actions that communicate without literal slogans. The starting point is a picture of the Provo movement walking through Amsterdam with a blank white banner. What strikes me in this example is that although the banner does not contain a literal message, it does convey a point. Most of us would understand that protesting with an empty white banner is a gesture to work around being censored. Another example I found through experimental jet set's superstructures is Daniel Buren's 7 Belay, people marching with abstract striped panels. Even without a declared cause, the shared act of carrying these panels through public space becomes a statement. To these first two images, I kept adding more images that have a similar nature, such as Ana Lupa's humid installation made in 1966 during the communist regime in Romania. It beautifully responds to the Provo sheets. This became the starting point of a collection. From this, I started a publishing project called Issue. Issue means both an important topic or problem for debate or discussion and the action of supplying or distributing an item for use, sale, or official purposes. The aim is to publish material each at its own pace while the archive keeps on growing. This way, there is room to look into different directions of the topic and be spontaneous when something comes on my path while researching how past and present echo each other. Each issue is a test case. Can a small material publication reactivate and circulate whenever it's needed? The first issue is issue number 1, High Red Center postcard. The issue depicts an exclamation mark that High Red Center, a Japanese avant-garde art collective active in the 1960s, used as their trademark. It symbolizes urgency, provocation, and a challenge to the status quo. Serving as both documentation and restoration, the postcard presents 2 images dissolved in the vast ephemeral space of the internet. Reprinted and published, the work is revived through renewed material presence. For me, this was a small but concrete way to materialize an archive fragment. Issue number 3, which I'm still finalizing, focuses on the white banner. It starts with the Provo blank banner, which the Provo movement came up with after Mayor Gijs van Hal banned the slogan against police violence and subsequently also freedom of speech and the right to demonstrate. However, the demonstrators were arrested anyway, which shows that the right to demonstrate was not respected by the authorities. The issue tracks how the gesture reappears. The white paper protest in China in 2022 and a recent pro-Palestine action that revived the same move after protesting in Amsterdam was banned for several days. The blank surface is paradoxically full. It's a smart way to work around censorship, resist misquotation, and signals solidarity through presence rather than through a slogan. Grouping these different protests shows how a single gesture travels, mutates, and remains legible across context. Issue number 4, printed at the beginning of this summer, focuses on the symbolic and physical act of cleaning, revealing how maintenance can become a form of resistance. The broom, mop, and sponge appear here not merely as tools for cleaning, but as symbolic objects of change, social critique, and subversion. Used to sweep away old ideologies, unwanted political beliefs, and the structures that sustain them. In this issue, I show the work of Mirle Laderman-Jukelis, Joseph Beuys, High Red Center, and several protests. Digging into these archives shows we're not acting alone or for the first time. We're part of a long conversation of forms and gestures. We can draw from these examples and adapt them to our current needs. It shows that the issues we're dealing with now were already issues back then. I noticed that protests from the past are often viewed with understanding and appreciation. They are often even romanticized, but these riots also involved violence. Think of the coronation riots in Amsterdam in the 80s, or the riots in Paris in 1968. By drawing parallels between those protests of then and those of now, where things sometimes get destroyed as well, or even bricks are being thrown at by protesters, I hope to remind people that resistance isn't just nice and polite, it also has harsher aspects, which were most likely necessary to be heard, and which hopefully ultimately led to progress. We shouldn't back down at the first radical voice. It's precisely this radical voice that can bring about change. Merely peaceful protest can, in a less ideal situation, absorb and neutralize resistance, rendering it harmless. I'm curious to further explore what the graphic language of protest can look like in 2025, how it can be reinvented, and whether it should be reinvented. Part of the nature of protest signs is that they are made quickly, often by hand and not always by designers. There's a beauty in a handwritten sign, yet an aesthetic poster can be very compelling and maybe even reach a bigger audience. I think that the aesthetics of the amazing poster designs that come to mind are very much originating in the techniques of the time. Think of Sister Corita Kent and See Red Women's Workshop, who worked with silkscreen, or this poster of the Provo movement, which is mimeographed, which, by the way, also is a beautiful example of showing how subversion can be expressed graphically. In the time these posters were made, those were the printing techniques at hand. Nowadays, information spreads mainly online, and therefore the majority of the posters are photo and vector-based. And this leads to different design choices. I believe the graphic language of protest is diverse and will build on the past and will eventually evolve over time.
So thank you, Geke. I'll try to step in here as well. Thank you, Geke. So it's quite interesting to see how you are drawing inspiration from protest movements at the past, but are employing that as well. And from that, I wonder if we can see the Issue magazine, or can I call it magazine, series, also as a way to sort of advocate the creative capacities for contemporary protest movements.
Yeah, I hope that it can advocate in that way and that it can inspire people to come up with also parades like the 7 Ballet, or like how you see how the Provo banner came back in the pro-Palestine demonstration. I think people are already very inspired by the past, but I hope to inform them with even more examples and yeah.
Lovely, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. So although we promised the evening centered on the archive and activism, we're kind of sneaking out of the archive and back on the street where we do encounter the activism. And it is here that we find the work of Studio Pino Portato, the creative practice of Pauline Wiersema, who happens to just sit right here. Thank you for that. Thank you for joining us this evening. Her work is bold, it is colorful, it's bright, and it's designed to make an impression within seconds. She graduated with honors from the master program Engaging the Public Issues at the Erasmus University. I hope I got it right, because otherwise these notes are useless. And she wrote a handbook on how to make the left sexy again. So welcome here, thank you, take the stage, it's all yours. Pauline.
Hello. Well, first of all, you're in for a treat, because I did not really catch that my screen's going to be split in 3. Like, so all the graphic designers can just like die every slide because the text is going to be split up, but I'll help you through it. So my name is Pauline. My studio is called Pino Potato, which is kind of my artist name by now. And as you just said, I make very visual, very playful, fun, kind of activist art. So I'm somewhere between art, design, and activism, and tends to be extremely left-wing. I'm a sucker for human rights. And I do build all kinds of installation for very progressive, very leftist NGOs or parties or whatever organizations. And then I also get a lot of calls from activists that need pretty posters, but they cannot get beyond Paint. So I love Paint, by the way. The program Paint. I also love normal Paint. Anyway, so this is the basic info. You basically said it all. I live in Rotterdam. I'm officially from Nijmegen. And I did a bachelor in design in Eindhoven. And then I graduated as well from a master of sociology at the Erasmus University. And I work for myself, which is great. there's a lot of work out there in the world because I love to just create and make and not think too much because I already do that on in my free time. My work tends to be very low threshold, simple to understand. I work at a fast pace. I work multidisciplinary, so I don't really care what I use. If it works for the cause, I'll use it. And for me, it's also very important that my work is mediagenic. So I like to get media attention with my work because I believe it's a way of change. And, well, this is some of my work. I'll get through some other ones. There's a shirt that says, Tering regering, because our government sucks. Stickers about seagulls, stickers about another piece of the government that I really dislike. And then there's also a picture of me getting arrested, because I also like getting arrested every now and then. So yeah, what's really my basic rule of design anytime is that you have to understand it in a couple of seconds, basically. And if you don't manage to understand the image and the sentiment within those seconds, there's probably something wrong. And that's my design rule, super important. I'm also kind of a populist. But I'll do that for anyone I work with. So this is a lot of, very important. There are some clients that I really love working for, which are the ones that try to make the world a better place. And then there's also a lot of ones that can call me, but I'll probably, I don't know, maybe I'll try to take their money and then use it for something else. So I'm very strict for the people I work with because I do believe really good design can make change and it can break a movement, but it can also make a movement. So I don't want to make those movements because they suck. So I work for lots of progressive people. And in the end, I hope my design kind of shakes things up a little bit, makes you look differently at the world, and hopefully, I don't know, maybe get a little closer to world peace. That's the main goal. I think we should dream big. I think if we can have world war, we can have world peace. It's really not that difficult. Yeah, so what does that look like? Well, say you get a call, tends to be kind of a panic call, especially during elections. And they ask me okay, we need a really big statement in the media about the fact that we don't want the taxes of culture to go up because it would make music, culture, whatever, it would make it too expensive. They asked me, can I sketch out a concept? I'll make a concept. I'll try to make Ropiette wear something, but he didn't agree. And that kind of leads to, as you can see here, I basically designed a really big bon, a really big recipe. Receipt, that's the word, not a recipe. I wish. And then we decided to roll it off a really big building during Prinsjesdag, which is a very important financial, political day, to get it in the media as much as possible, to ask attention for this issue. And it actually did end up in a lot of newspapers. And then, of course, there were a lot of lobbyists and politicians and cultural makers that were interviewed to kind of, get this on the agenda. And the great part is that it actually did manage to change some things. Of course, not just my little receipt, but also the whole movement behind it. Actually, the support for this law just hugely dropped to a point where eventually there was no more higher tax on culture. So that's kind of one little thing that I, as a designer, can contribute to, which I really love. Wasn't me. I made a pretty picture. I asked for attention. This is actually, there's a lot of graphic designers out here, right? Okay, because then, I see some little nods. Then I'm sure you know the battle with clients where they basically try to put as much information on your poster as possible and you try to fight back on them and be like, everything you're putting on makes the design worse. This is a perfect example of this, actually. I designed a pretty cool tax letter for a campaign about fossil industries, basically. And then the client basically started adding more and more information and text and even some sort of house style to a point where it just looked horrible. You can see those on the left. It's kind of slowly progresses into something mediocre. And then you give up and you're like, well, at least I'm getting paid. It's okay. But the best part is that sometimes they ask me to also make it 3D. And that's where you see that big picture on the right is where we actually were asked to make the tax letter into a 3D object. And that was really cool. So sometimes when I'm at a party and I've had too many drinks, I try to tell people that I'm a professional attention seeker, because sometimes I get these emails where they're like, can you make sure we get to the front page? And sometimes that works, and that's really cool. So here you can see some of my work that ended up in the media, which actually hugely helps nonprofits to kind of, make their cause a little more important and actually change something in policy, because it's out there. That's just how media attention works. A lot of the times it just starts with a concept. I make a sketch, pretty simple sketch. I tell the client, do you like it? And then when they say yes, I go on to execute it, which is also something you see here. So on the left, you see a pretty simple drawing that I made. And then this is actually the end result. So we made a huge stack of boxes that symbolizes the amount of proof that we have against the ING bank, because it's a very polluting bank and basically they're suing them. And this is like a typical piece of work that I really love to make because it's 3D, it's big, it's in your face, and then sometimes it gets in the media. But the most important message to everyone here, are you angry? Start a project. I don't know, in Dutch we say, ben je boos, pluk een roos. That's wrong. Don't pick a rose. Horrible advice. Start a project, because, that's how I do it, at least. I'm sure a lot of people struggle with powerlessness and getting really confused and very overwhelmed by war and geopolitics and really dumb, ugly leaders that are trying to mess things up. But if you kind of start a little project, and for me, sometimes that's just like a silly poster or a silly sticker, it kind of feels like you're getting back this tiny piece of territory that means you're actually able to make a little bit of change. And that can even be in your neighborhood, in your household. It can have to do with your, with your cat, but it really helps and it's very fun. And it's really important to keep the fun in if you're a designer or an artist like me, because it's a pretty cool job if you get to enjoy it. Yeah, and this is just, I'm looking at you for time. How am I doing? Yeah? What does that mean? Okay, yeah, I can do. This is another project that I started out of frustration with the VVD. I was just really upset with them. I'd seen them in power for too long, and I started a campaign against them. So I designed 6 posters, at night when I was angry, and I collaborated with a couple of organizations, and we were able to actually spread, I think, like a good 500,000 pieces of these throughout the elections. They lost 1 seat in the parliament. That was on me. And you can see all the way on the right that Mark Rutte is holding a sticker. He is laughing, obviously. But this is something that was just really interesting also to do and to go through. And it's also, for me, it's a good way to just put my energy into something I care about. And then also, in the same elections, I also thought of a campaign for the Green Left. And I presented it to them kind of jokingly, and then they liked it so much that they bought it off me, which was a whole experience on its own, which meant that I also had a national campaign running like 2 years ago. And then the extreme right fascists basically copycatted my campaign because they thought it would be funny. So I've been able to design for both the extreme left and the extreme right, which I think looks interesting on my resume. Kan gewoon means, well, can do, basically. Yeah, I'm happy the QR code didn't get cut in half. As you also just said in your introduction, I have a design guide called Make Links Sexy Again, because I was just so hugely frustrated with the amount of design mistakes and weird things made on the left. And I truly believe that a movement that you want to be part of also has to be a sexy movement that looks good. So if you're interested, feel free to download my free ebook over there. You can also just go to my website and find Handbook, and you'll make it as well, with just really practical, simple tricks to make your designs better, to make the movement better, to be an activist with better visual statements, and make it a little clear, all of it. And then there's a lot of advice in there that I like to take myself as well, which means also that I try to add as little noise as possible to posters. Well, the big one, the successful one got cut in half, but I think it reached about like 2 million people. And it was basically a call to go to a protest against fascism and racism. And it was so simple, and there were very little extra elements in it. And therefore, it kind of boomed without like any money spent on marketing. So that was a good deal. Anyway, for all the extra advice, you can see the ebook. But worse, there's another ebook. It's also for free, and it's about the elections, because there's also a lot of mistakes made during elections by leftist parties that I don't think should be happening. So in case you're somehow in politics, or I don't know, you just feel like reading, you can also download the election special about from Make the Left Sexy Again. I think that should be about it. That's it. Thank you so much for listening.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this. Very insightful and bold and beautiful, as I think the work is, the presentation is. Thank you for that. So as we are now trying, I'm forcefully trying to get us back into the archives, only for a bit. But
I've never been.
You've never been. Okay, so there goes my question. Now I was wondering if you know, like, to what extent you relate to some of the works of the past. If that's something that that you seek out to, that informs you, because you talk about the mistakes, you talk about how you look at political campaigns. Is that something, or?
Well, I mean, I have like a whole map of inspiration and interesting examples from the past that I look into, especially when they're really iconic and really good. Mm-hmm. That's just something that inspires me. But it's not something that I particularly look for when I'm designing myself. I think that's just a different skill. I'm very much focused on contemporary culture. For instance, Nijntje, Miffa. That's, of course, could you call it archival? I don't know. But it's something really, in our present brain, and that's what I try to relate to, yeah.
Right, so it's more like the collective memory that's an active part of that.
But of course, I build onto a tradition of, iconic design, and my whole, I hope that I'm able to contribute to it as well. Like, I hope my work ends up in the archive. That's important, because that means it's probably done something good in the world.
Right, it had a reach. And so there's another thing that I was wondering, because Richard slightly talked about how roughly around the 90s, political parties and NGOs and charities, they started to move away from asking, let's say, artists and designers to switching to large-scale advertising agencies.
Yeah,
not
happy about that.
What did we lose there?
Authenticity, I think. And a connection also to the people that you're trying to reach. I think if you're able to work together with a lot of designers and artists, musicians, dancers, performers, whatever, you're also able to kind of connect to a group of people that have this whole reach themselves. And I think, which I think happens a lot right now in political campaigning, is what they do. They're a campaigning team, and they play by the book, and they all play by the book. So the one book plays against the other book, and is against the other book, and then someone wins because their leader is maybe a little more boring than the other. That's this election. The most boring one is going to win. And it's so uninteresting. Like, you got to kind of stand out, and you need people to stand out. But you need them to stand out, but it's not happening. And I think if you're just doing the whole marketing thing, I don't know. I think you lose a lot. Yeah.
Right. So authenticity and integrity are quite the key words there. Yeah. In a way.
Yeah. And you can now, if anyone is familiar with the case of Mamdani, the person who's trying to run for mayor in New York City, he's got a campaign that's extremely authentic, with a lot of grassroots movements, with a lot of volunteers, and it really stems from the fact that what he does is him. Like, it fits him. It's not just some like a little sauce that you spread on top of it like a marketing campaign. It's like, it fits him like a glove. And that's where it becomes interesting. I think that's what we also need in our political leftist system.
Right. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So now we have a bit of a clue on the speakers. Thank you all for sharing some of your insights and experiences, what you've gained in the field, what you gained throughout your own experiences. And so from there on, I would kind of like to open our panel talk so everyone can jump in. Later, we also have an opportunity for all of you, the audience, to ask questions as well. So if there's something cooking like a question, keep it cooking, and then we can come back to that. But so as we are thinking about the materials that are residing into archives, I was wondering, and Marius, maybe we can ask this first to you, what the role is of the designer in activating that material that is in the archives. We see a lot of our material in there that has social relevancy, if not urgency. So how can the graphic designer contribute to activate that material?
Does this work? Oh,
yes.
Yeah, great. That's a good question. I guess that's, a bit up to anyone's skills also in a way. That's also maybe what I see now when I see all these presentations. I feel like everybody is trying to use their abilities and skills in the best way possible to sort of contribute to this. And in my case, I guess I try to just help facilitate with the knowledge that I have in books or in designing a poster or an image to tell the story in an effective way. But it's kind of funny because I feel there's radically different ways to do this, where I guess try to create an image that probably opposes commercial language. And I have big respect for you that you're basically playing with it in a way, to me it's completely alienating in a way, because I feel that I'm more trying, probably what we're doing is I'm doing is like a little sand in the grain, totally ineffective, but still I kind of believe that it maybe helps to have an umbrella or like a gradient or a spectrum, and also maybe to work also visually more inspired by the archive, kind of take this, I always think like of this power, the power of these movements of the past, this energy, and kind of convey that into now. But I don't know if it works out or not at all, But yeah.
I think in a way, absolutely.
Is this an answer to that question?
I'll see it as an answer. I'll tolerate an answer. Absolutely. So, Geke, how's that for you? Because with the publications that you're making, you're also sort of like taking the material that is, can I say, sort of like dusting in the archive box, or actually it shouldn't dust in the archive boxes, but you take it out and bring it outside of the bastion of these archival institutes and bring it into a world. So how's that for you? How do you see that role of design to activate that material?
I think in this stage, I see it mainly as a way of researching the subject and showing that research and sharing it with people. And I think that that research, I hope that it will eventually lead me to use it more in a way where I can bring it back to the now, and where I can let a new graphic language come out of this, or let new happenings and protests come out of it. But I think right now I still see it as a research stage, and the design is only the carrier of the information.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go in for the...
Yeah, I will do another question from our question list. I want to ask a question to Farida. Sometimes materials from archives or from the things that you find have highly charged meaning already in them, such as archives of emancipation movements. So how does using this material, almost as a ready-made or as a sample, intersect with application and appropriation? And what can we do to encourage its respectful treatment? So,
Yeah. Yeah. To be honest, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Then I just can as an example, just know that growing up in the 90s with hip-hop, inspired by hip-hop, and then that generation of the golden age sampled original records, let's say, yeah? They sampled the records of their parents' generation and made something new. And yeah, there's a fine line between, let's say, a Diddy sampling the Police and Jay Dilla sampling something of Pete Rock, you know? So we, even then at 14, 15, we were like, ooh, you know? Like, why is this a good sample? And why is this not a good sample? So I think it's a lot about, you know, and even though it was quite a good pick from Diddy, but okay, no Diddy, maar to go back, it's the dual, the goal, the purpose, you know. Is it in music? Whether he just wanted to make a hit, a commercial hit, that was the goal, and with the others, you could sense that it was driven by inspiration, by creativity, by reintroducing us to our parents' music. Because without that sample in that song, we wouldn't even know about that particular band or something. So I think with images, it's the same, you know, like. I grew up with something, but that doesn't mean that my friends know that image or next generation knows that image. So I think herhaling is in that sense a healthy thing, not of everything, of course, not of hate, maar it has something positive, seeing something repeatedly.
So if we continue this thought, and do you also see around you like images that are treated in a like this police sample, like the people just use it to make money or to without using it as paying respect to or referencing in another way?
Well, visually I don't see now of in graphic design, I wouldn't. I think Pauline would see or recognize more of it, maybe.
Yeah, maybe Pauline, if you.
Maar but for instance, in reclamas, in commercials, I do. You know, then you see like it's about toothpaste, but then you see someone breakdancing, and it's like, what does it have to do with each other? You know, the exploitation of culture. So there I see it very clearly.
Okay. Pauline, how is that? Can you elaborate on that?
How images are abused?
Yeah, where is this line between using it in a good way or in a bad way?
I mean, the line is definitely always blurry because it really depends on how people judge. Like something that we'll make now might be completely differently judged in 20 years from now, and I think that's a healthy thing. But it's also the same the other way around, right? Like when we now look back at something that's been written or made in the 80s or the 70s, we probably cringe in some way or the other. There's like so many things made that you don't even want to look at anymore because it's just so wrong from a perspective right now. And I think that's healthy. I'm not sure if I could think of an example right away of how people are abusing images right now. I'm sure it happens all the time, especially with AI. It's like, it's so easy to just make things that I really don't want to see.
But also your own work has been
what happened?
Used again, right?
By the FAD, yeah. That was, I personally thought it was kind of funny. But, that's a good example.
Do you actually know if there was a designer involved who made this choice? Because somebody must have designed these posters.
At the FAD? Yeah. Well, it's probably a very, very bad designer. I think that's one thing that we're kind of lucky with. I think on the more extreme right side of things, they really suck at design. So please, if anyone in this room is good at design, do not apply to them. Like we want them to make really ugly, silly things, a bit like the AI stuff that Geert Wilders keeps putting out. It's so bad. It's so unpretty.
But isn't that the new aesthetic, though?
Yeah, but maybe, I don't know, maybe people are going to just have a lot of bad taste for the coming years. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe
I don't know if that's an answer.
maybe actually that's a nice sort of whoa moment to cross classes.
Just want to break the tension.
Rage. Yes, activism.
More rage.
Store this place
Turn it into a
upside
project.
down.
Yeah, I was thinking of a question because of the reusing of images. It just reminds me of, because I see that Yuri is sitting here as well.
I love his work.
Yeah, when I
Love his work. You should all go to his website. Yuri Veerman.
When I went to
Sorry.
like he makes also images that people, draw themselves on banners and walk with that on the Won't protest. And so, if images are reused in this way, it activates the audience. I don't know if this is not leading to a question. Killian, help me.
So I tried. So let's go back to you, Geke. So I was wondering actually, because it's something that we did sort of touch upon when we were thinking about what you're doing with the issues, right? Sort of like highlighting that creativity does have a interesting potentiality. So if we then draw back to the thing that I was asking you earlier, Pauline, that sort of, if I can call it the disenchantment or the increasing poverty of images in our political domain, when we start to move towards advertising companies who are taking charge of campaigns for charities. How do you as a designer look at that sort of like that process of styling that into sort of like standardized images and media campaigns?
I think if I speak for myself, I hardly don't even notice these campaigns anymore because they all look so much the same, and I think it lacks so much authenticity. What you said before. So in that sense, I think they're not working for me, and I think probably not for many people. And also, this question reminded me of how sometimes a slogan can be printed on a tote bag, and you can walk around with it. And you can really believe in that slogan, but sometimes it also loses its power because it just becomes a mere tote bag and something you just walk around with to show that you're maybe being an activist. And in a way, that's also kind of making the slogan less strong. Yet at the same time, I also think it's cool to have to show your opinion, like walk around with a Palestine flag or kifaya or whatever you think is needed. So I wouldn't say we shouldn't do that, but I do think it can sometimes impoverish.
There's a sweater that everyone keeps wearing that says, "Artists are the new athletes." Can we cancel that one? I think it's so silly. That's for me, that's a typical example. I'm sure at some point in history it meant something. And then everyone started wearing it at the Zuidas, and now it means nothing anymore. I think that happens.
Right, absolutely. So I think
I can ask one last question before we start asking the audience, I guess.
Also have one, but go.
You also have one?
Yeah,
okay.
I have a last question.
I have a quick one. Okay, so sometimes, the archives, or for example, the squatters movement, are used by designers for what they call contemporary resistance, but they seem to have imposed a discourse and even also an aesthetic on them that focuses more on the art world than on the street. And I think, we might recognize that. So these projects are often only show also within the walls of the museum and also targeted in that sense to that audience, while at the same time it wants to, it seems to have different aims. So maybe Marius, do you recognize this tendency, and what are your thoughts on this? I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing.
No, I'm also always continuously wondering about this because, of course, it is also fashion. The archive is fashion at the moment, and then I think also now that maybe then we look at these very complex projects that have a lot of history and a lot of references, but then we see one single individual image on our phones, and then and then you judge a project maybe for what you see, but that's just like the tip of the iceberg of the entire story that this project actually tried to communicate. And I think, and as soon as that happens, and a lot of people see these images, they try to reproduce these images without the context of the project. And I see in graphic design, we're in the middle of this crisis in a way, where the hollowed out image is also what people study. And when you study the hollowed out image, then you will never get to the bottom of an issue. And then you lose potential. Right? That was very clever.
Very clever.
I'm almost a bit like I have to think on what I just said.
But so, oh, sorry, go for it.
No, it's almost like because another question that I had, like for years we also graphic design also as graphic design is being taught at graphic design academies or art academies. It's also attempted to do just to complexity, so you get actually complex and layered works that we all admire as graphic designers. Layered outputs that refer to many contexts that you might not all know, but there's a whole story behind it. So when looking at protest archives, it is also striking that these images are actually super simple and activating. So is there somehow, do you think that the teaching of graphic design might also be steered more into better or more simplified image making, or I don't know what.
Maybe I guess maybe to a degree that happens because this is the media environment that we are in. That's our reality, right? So I'm just, and that's why I'm also kind of like when I said earlier this plea for books, because for me they are really this kind of object. Also, in preparation of this talk, I wanted to look up a story again that I saw, where and that was interesting because I think that was Sander Schimmelpenning, and then the singer Abel, the singer of Hang Hughes, discussing the poster of that protest, where you made an alternative poster, and they both hated the poster that was originally made, I think and I couldn't find it back, that story, but it was because I don't exactly know anymore what they said, and it was super frustrating to me that I couldn't go back just these 20 days where I saw this. So it's so fleeting.
I have it saved. I can send it to you.
I was thinking that you might. No, but
the archive.
Yeah, for the archive. No, but in a way, so these things they happen and are discussed very quickly and ephemeral, and then I don't know. Then I would make a book. I would like to make a book where the screenshot, maybe issue, with that screenshot and the discussion, a little interview with both of them.
Let's make a collaboration on that.
Right? Should we do that?
I can go into my own personal archive.
You send the screenshot, and then we take it from there.
So projects are already cooking, right? We're not plucking the rose. We are turning it into projects. That's quite nice. During your talk, Farida, and actually in our preparations towards this event, because yes, we did prepare, right? You mentioned the distinction between having a artistic practice and a practice rooted in activism. So I was hoping, could you elaborate on this differentiation and why that's so important?
No, yeah, because it's still wrong on the Instagram, by the way. Maar maybe because I have so much respect for our activists that I feel like calling my practice an activist practice is it? And what is that? Am I really on the forefront? So that's why I want to separate it, okay, I'm inspired by, but do I actually do the work? I don't know. I would say no. So that's why I would separate it. But maybe. Maar ik denk, it's just what I read and I'm like, no. Maar misschien als ik er echt over nadenk, is het wel zo? Weet je, if I think about my first work, it's eigenlijk wel zo. But that's
Maybe not all the time.
it's like 25 years ago, you know, like, so yeah, I don't know. Of I know, I would separate it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that something that you, Pauline, can relate to? Because it seems that you're almost at the opposite end, admitting not necessarily to keep an archive, other than this one image, of course, of the sort of the predecessing movements, but you're really grounding yourself into a activist environment. So is that a distinction that matters to you?
Between art and activism, you mean? Or
Between an activistic practice and a practice rooted in activism?
yeah, I don't know. I'm going to give a horrible answer, but I just don't really care. Like, for me, what's the most important is that I make work that communicates and that motivates people to go onto the streets or to do something that makes this world a tiny bit nicer. And whether that's called activist or artistic or design or shit. Like, I really don't care about the semantics of my work. People could call me anything. It could be rooted in anything. I really just care for the end result. I'm kind of a process hater sometimes, and I think that's also when it comes to the archive and everything out there that inspires me. It's so much because there's just so much in the world to see and to, I don't know, to just, get in my system. But it's also just chaos. It's a chaos of inspiration, and what it is exactly, I don't really care. Yeah, that's my horrible answer.
It is now?
I just want it to work. I just want the end result to work and to do what it needs to do. And then we'll just move on to the next work. That's it.
That's also a nice bridge to move on to the next questions, which are not ours. Are there questions from the audiences? We do have a question already. Perfect. Lovely.
Shall I be the microphone bringer?
Well, yes, go for it. I'll exercise on stage.
It's actually less of a question, more of a statement.
Wait, are we doing that? A question?
No,
what do they say? Wait. A question is maximum 2 sentences with a question mark at the end,
Okay.
right?
Well, no, I'm really inspired by the conversation. I think there's a big role design can play in activism. I just want to say that it's also important that it's accessible to everyone, particularly historical archives and so on, that anyone can do it, not just researchers, and play around with it in modern forms of media, which in the Netherlands is quite good, but not in other countries. And then for activism, there has also the historical archives are being used right now by like the Lamina and so on, which is very nice, like looking back at the past ways of protest. And now there's also for the feminism, there has been this crowdfunding campaign that goes through like the traditional advertising agencies. And I think a more effective way potentially to do it, if I really like what was said, if you're angry, just like do something. Design a poster, put it up, or stickers. As designers, we have the tool to do this. We have the tools to make change happen. So I just wanted to reiterate that.
There's no question mark. Someone else wants...
You got to break the rules sometimes. It's okay.
Someone else wants to ask a question.
Yes. A question here.
I have a question for Pauline. I like your work a lot, and I wonder what your opinion is about the following. I read a message from Follow the Money that the VVD gets a lot of media attention right now. Like, probably more people saw it. I think your work is very contagious because it's fun and you want to share it. It works very well. But I still wonder, in this time, the media is very negative and it gets a lot of attention. So, yeah, what's your opinion about this? Like, how do you think you could change this concept?
You're saying the VVD getting a lot of...
VVD, yeah.
With the V or the P?
V.
VVD, okay.
VVD. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough conversation to have that I think also, journalists and media should be involved in. I think I prefer, of course, to get attention for positive causes, for changing something for the good, but there's also just the fact that negative attention brings a lot of attention. Like, it's a rule also in political campaigning that they say, negatieve aandacht is ook aandacht. Negative attention is also attention. And that's something that works, especially with rage bait. And like, there's so many ways of getting people to listen to you by making them angry. I'm personally not a fan, but it is something that's really tough to battle. I think if people put a lot of, angry or fearful things out there, you're gonna have to probably top it with 5 times more optimism and 5 times more energy and color and a belief in a better world to kind of get past that. And that's really difficult. And I wish I had an answer to how to do that, but it's a tough battle. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, maybe one question. Did you see the new slogan of Volt? Doe iets nieuws.
Doe iets nieuws.
And then dance a lot on the street to actually, make. You haven't seen it
something
yet?
Dancing? What?
Yeah, they're trying to let people dance actually and do something positive and new.
Well,
so you haven't seen it, okay?
Well, I guess if they're all going to dance themselves first, that might become interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
I wonder about their dancing skills. Yeah, let's go.
Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's more for the archive people. Sorry. Out of all the things that are in archives, like all the topics and all the interesting stories, how do you select the ones that you want to bring out to back here to the present? To any of you that want to answer.
For me, it's easy because I don't really make the selection because I can hide behind the artists. But I guess when we are selecting the artists who are applying, then to me it's maybe I would be very happy if the topics are relevant. First of all, so maybe there are not yet, I didn't yet see artwork about it, and it's maybe a story that I didn't see yet in this circuit of what we're dealing with. But on the other hand, also now I realize that things become very repetitive, like this kind of the white cube solution, like the white cube kind of getting a work out of the out of the archive and then putting it in beautiful way into an exhibition. That doesn't really work for me anymore. It should be there must be a comment or a digestion of the material, more I think in the direction of what you are doing with your work. That there's that you mix it up in a way and that something new comes out of it that is powerful and that's not just a copy of the archival piece represented anew. Because I think that's not enough. I think it should really be activated in a way that it has a new energy. And maybe what I also like what Farida is saying, that I think that we should try, because it's always rational, we're argumenting for this was important then and maybe we should reconsider it now, and we have a rational discussion about why this is important. But I'm feeling that this more guts approach where you make intuitive choices and make something that just intrigues people maybe down there is maybe more important. Or growingly important, I don't know. That's now very big, but I think that also reacts to this populist game in a way, which you're kind of playing with the left and the right, and it feels like a loop in a way of this. You got to top up this, and then they do this, and then they copy this, and it's almost breaking that cycle somehow. How do we get there? That's I feel. That would be my question or my urge. Not really an answer to your question, but I think that's maybe what these projects should aim for, that they maybe stop that loop of populism and go into a place of poetry and inspiration and alternative.
We do have time for one more question if it's out there, which I'm scanning, no question. In that case, I would say maybe that's time to wrap it up. Astrid, would you like to join us while wrapping it up?
I want to add one last thing.
But first, Richard, join us for adding...
Because you all found this beautiful folder on your seat. It's made by Angèle Jaspers. And yeah, we want to thank her as well for contributing to the evening in this way.
Make the world a tiny bit nicer again. It was for me, it was a very inspirational and very optimistic evening. I hope you have the same feeling at the end of the evening. But the Wim Krauwel Institute wants to thank a couple of people. So it takes 5 minutes, and then you can go down and have your beer and talk to each other. So I hope you have 2-3 minutes of patience. The Wim Krauwel Institute wants to thank. And now, it's stupid, but your name, wait, I have it here. Geke, Farida, Marius, and Pauline. And of course, the 2 moderators, Richard and Kilian. Give them a... Then, of course, we would like to thank our partners. That's Pakhuis de Zwijger, where we have been doing this already for, I don't know, 14 times, 13 times, I don't know. And they are a great partner to do this together, to join their audience, to join their community, and the other way around. So thank you, Michelle and Alex. Then our other partner is, of course, Allard Piersot, which I already mentioned in the beginning. That's a very inspirational partner to understand how, when we're talking about archives, I already told you, look it up. The NADD, it's an abbreviation of Netwerk Archieven, Design and Digital Culture. One of our partners is the Stedelijk Museum. I don't know if somebody's here, but of course we also do other programs over there. Then some of the funding people, which is also really important to be able to do this. It's Pixel Right Funds. It's NADD. They also give us a little bit of money to do these evenings. It's really important. Het Cultuurfonds. I have the feeling I forget somebody, Bruni, but maybe they apologize, or I apologize if that's the case. Then I want to thank Simon Pillot. Where is Simon? Yeah, he's the photographer, and he makes our archive, so thank you, Simon, for that. Angèle Jaspers, who did this beautiful folder that you can all take home. I'm not there yet, but almost. I want to thank Bruni Hofman, who is the coordinator of the Wim Krauwel Institute and is really the spine of what we can do and how we can develop our movement. And I want to thank, of course, all of you for being here, for being co-thinking with us what activism could be. And I hope you will have a very nice rest of the evening downstairs. You can have a drink, talk to each other, make activism the new reality again. Thank you.